Oh no, it's got a cracked block. Here's the repair piece. Finished product. 280 miles away from home. Yes, used to drive in classic Mercedes, and I found myself in a VW Transporter, finding myself in convoys of Transporter, thinking about getting like flowers and stuff hanging from my rearview mirror. Drives past in a VW Transporter, I'm like this, thinking about surfboards all the time. This is why you need to have your boat in the Solent on the New Forest. It is an incredibly beautiful place.
Look at him!
These seats have been done by my mum, and I'm really proud of them actually. Which I would be, wouldn't I? Because my mum's done them. I can't wait to get them on. This is good. What do you say?
A 1980's Ford engine with a cracked block.
First job before I go anywhere is to finish off stop taps. I had to get another fitting. Is the coolant still in there? Oh, it's still there. It hasn't dropped. That's good news.
Will it still be in there when we get back?
Has it all been talk, or will it work? Why I'm doing this and why I'm even bothered. It's a very common breakdown on boats. If your pipework to and from the coryllifier is bursts, you lose all the coolant out of your engine. Game over, you could really damage your engine.
Question for people that don't know things. What is a coryllifier?
The heater hot water tank.
And that's the engine that heats the hot water?
Yeah. So when this engine's running, the coolant goes round a circuit into a coil inside a big tank that's insulated, warms the water in that tank using the engine. Pre-departure checks. First thing we're going to check is the oil on both engines. Look how clean that engine oil is, you can barely even see it on the stick. Check that you've got no water in the bilge. Coolant levels. Yep, coolant levels good. On these, by the way, with the cast tanks, there's kind of like a lip inside. And if this was lower, you would see a steel lip. You want the water level to be just above that lip. Gearbox oil. These are Borg Warner 72C 1.6 to 1 reduction. They look coaxial. Coaxial basically means the input of the gearbox and the output of the gearbox are on the same plane. But it's not coaxial. It's a drop box. 1 3/4 inches. It actually just drops very slightly. These gearboxes actually have different gear sets in them. One that's normal rotation and one that's reverse rotation. But they're on different heights as well. So because one has a different set of gears, one's 1.5 inch down drop and the other one's like 1 3/4. So they're actually different. It's weird, isn't it? I've just completely rebuilt these and replaced the couplings and the shafts and redid all the bearings. Gearbox oil check. You're supposed to do this with them running. You can put a marking on your dipstick for like a static position. And that's how clean your gear oil should look. Oil catch can between the rocker covers and the turbo inlets. Always worth checking that these aren't full of oil. That one's absolutely clean as a whistle. Check that your cocks are all open or closed as necessary. Some people with their sea toilets require them to be closed while at sea. Underneath those covers you've got filters and you can check them. And these little bad boys here, you give them a few turns and that is pumping grease into bearing to allow it that bit of lubrication before we get underway. New driving seat feels amazing. Thanks, Mum. That just started instantly. I had like restarted that. You can see there's a little bit of smoke. But let's take this bad boy out for a test drive. To the 7 Seas. Will the cylinder head fire off? Will the head studs be nothing but a myth? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Let's get this boat out into the open sea. See how she performs. Doing a straight reverse out of here. Realise you're being propelled by the very last of the Dorset engines ever made. This is English diesel heritage. It's a fine day on the water, Egg. That's a tick over. Well, just over. Life jackets, Egg. Safety first, safety first. We're doing it, Egg. Grand Banks, I think. Love those things. Those boats have often these Ford engines. Did you know, Egg, that there were 1 million Ford Dorset engines made before 1980?
Where were they made?
Dagenham. Dagenham, in London. I've got a plan. If I fix enough engines, can we buy that house? How many engines do you think I'd have to fix to buy that house? One engine versus the other. I mean that the right engine, the one that I haven't touched, is down on power for some reason at the minute. Other engine in neutral. You know, sort of like top speed. I'm gonna have to use quite a bit of rudder. A little bit of black smoke. 8.4 knots. Turbo's clearly in. Okay, so let's try the other engine then. Doing the same thing. So that was 8.4 knots. Turn the rudder the other way. This is the one that's been bought and polished and rebuilt. Sounds a similar sort of RPM, maybe a little bit more. That engine on its own is giving me 8.6, 8.7, maybe a little bit more. Let's bring the other one up with it. Real big jump. So found out why it was going slow. One of the stop controls was slightly pulled, which makes sense why that engine was being hard to start, and it never normally is hard to start. Sheer horsepower is twisting the boat. 22 knots. That's the fastest it's ever been. Wow. About 73 decibels, which is quite reasonable up here. It works! It works! 360 horsepower of Ford turbo diesel power. Yeah, boy. Left a bit. Those who don't know where the Solent is on the south coast of England, and it's a little strip of water that runs along here basically. This is the Isle of Wight. So this is a separate island, and this is the south of England. And what we've done is we've come up Southampton water. So if you're going on a cruise or that kind of thing, usually you would come to Southampton. This is Southampton water. Now this is quite a historic little area. So over there.
Hold on, I was just doing a swoop of the ships.
Over there is a marina called Hamble Point. Well, Hamble Point is kind of that edge, and that is historic because Hamble Point is where the ferry boats were made. So if you're into your classic powerboats, that was quite an iconic little place. Well, it wasn't little at one point, but sadly ferry marine closed down in the 80s, I believe, and no longer exist, but there's a lot of enthusiasts still about that love them. And all the other bits that are surrounding us here are basically all refinery, fuel tanker dock. port type things. I don't know very much about it, but there's obviously a lot of that kind of thing going on. There once was a ship that went to sea. The name of the ship was a Billy of Tea. There is where Southampton Boat Show is. Just that area there. So if you've heard of Southampton Boat Show, that's where it takes place. It's the place to be in September in the UK. Southampton Boat Show. Be there. Support British boating. And if you like drinking, it's good for that as well. Go there. We made it.
Yeah, your fenders are a bit low, so just come off and...
You need my help now, don't you? It's not enough for me just to fix the engine.
No, well the fenders are too low. So I'm like holding the fender up so it doesn't bang against the...
What, you were worried about damaging this? Perfection?
This cost us like, what, 20 grand?
No.
Legal fees?
No. I'm pulling it. We should have just done this instead of fixing the engine. We could have just pulled it wherever we needed to go. It's only 9.5 tons. Come on, come on. Been to Southampton, but I've never been to Scunthorpe. You see these walls that go all the way along, these historic walls? I might be wrong, but I believe if you go back 100 years, these walls were pretty much on the water's edge. Have a look at historic photos of Southampton and you can see the walls at a very short distance to the water. So what we're stood on here and all that goes across there must all be man-made. Unless it's another bit that I'm talking about and I'm talking out my arse as usual. But... So where are we?
Red Dog Saloon.
Red Dog Saloon. And I'm tempted with this sliced USDA brisket. Oh, what have you got? Sauerkraut.
I want yours now.
I thought you got a hot dog.
No.
Oh.
It's called Red Hot Dog though.
Shush, it's eat time. Sunshine, burgers and diesel engines. If this is successful and it doesn't break and this repair has worked, it's got to be one of the best days ever, hasn't it? It's moment of truth time. See if we can see any staining coming down the side where that gasket blew out before. That's it there, the piece I've put in. I can't see any signs of leakage. There's absolutely nothing down the side of the block. No signs at all. I think we've got away with it. I think it's fixed it. Saw the level of the coolant in the header tank when we started. Let's open it up and see if there's the same amount in. Oh, look at that. And it's clean as a whistle. Look at that. It hasn't dropped. It's worked. I'm pleased. I'm pleased. We drove here, which was like an hour maybe of wide open throttle. I mean, that's a pretty good little test. I'm pleased, and we've lost no coolant. I'm going to have a look at the oil. So you saw how clean that oil was. Let's have a look at how clean the oil is now. It's still quite clean, considering how many times I flushed it. We haven't lost any, so that's good. Next, we're going to have a look at the inside of those breathers. Do you remember when I was saying earlier about the engine not pulling and having enough power? And it turned out I'd actually left the stop lever pulled up a little bit. Well, what that is, when you pull the stop lever up, because on these old engines you can't just turn them off on the key, there's a cable here, look, and this lever here is a pull stop, and if you pull this way, it turns the engine off. But if there isn't enough tension pulling it back that way, the engine won't give full performance. It's really important that that is correct. Same with throttle lever adjustment and all that sort of thing on these older engines. You can lose power, big power, by just having incorrect slacking cables. A little bit of moisture, a little bit of oil. There's more moisture than oil in there. But that oil and moisture and everything that it's collecting in there, it's not ending up in the intercooler and clogging all the intercooler up. That's why I've made these. Oh wow, nothing at all. There's like a little mist of oil inside that pot and that's it. There's no build up. Well, I'm happy with that. Right, I think we're all good.
Should we put the floor down?
Yeah, I'm going to just tighten up that cutlass bearing because I'm not quite happy with it. We've got a little bit of water in. So this long run at high throttle position is really the first time the gearboxes, the shafts and those cutlass bearings and everything have really been used since it was done in the winter. So I've just checked the gearbox oil levels, they're perfect. So I rebuilt the gearboxes, right? I need to tighten up that packing.
Gland.
Stern gland.
That's it.
Yeah, rope, fed, stern gland. Yeah. We've done a sound test to let you see the difference of these open engines. So originally when we first rebuilt this a couple of years ago with all the manifolds and everything, because it was totally shot, revarnished ththese boards and all the foam had fallen apart and was falling on the engine, so I removed it and just had boards. It was noisy. So I bought this stuff, 40mm thick insulation. I've used some spray glue, but I also put a couple of screws and washers in. Wow, putting that foam on the back of this board, big difference in noise, much more comfortable in the boat. So I'm going to do an actual sound meter test on the, you know, with some power down, see the difference, see what happens. Speed cruising, 5 knots. About 59 decibels. It's about 68, 69 decibels at 6.1 knots, and that's just sitting. These rev counters seem to have a mind of their own. We're about 1000 RPM. That's with the floor back down. We haven't got all the seats in yet, but it's starting to look something like. Let's see what kind of sound levels it is at higher pace. Hovering about 71, and we're doing 8 knots and around about 1250 revs. Let's open it up. About 10 knots. We are against the tide a little. About 74. So we're flat knacker, we're flat down there. About 78. Not too bad really, you could still talk fine. And that's flat down. High five.
Oh, I was trying to...
Yeah. And it's a high five because...
The engines are fixed.
It worked. It worked. Thank you all the guys and girls that watched the original video. It's probably mainly going to be guys.
Yeah, I was going to say no girls watched that.
Mainly guys that were so positive about the fix. What we've done today is we've gone from the marina here. We've done 25 miles there and back to Southampton. We did about 20 of those miles at full throttle. The thing that I've noticed about today is it's super hot and there's no wind. And it almost felt like the engines were suffocating a little bit. It doesn't really have air intakes as such. It has these kind of trumpets that are on the end of the turbos, and then it kind of has the vents on the side of the boat, which I'll show you on a piece of B-roll. They're just like vents, but there's nothing really pushing the air into the engine bay or into the turbos when you're underway. I don't know if that's purposeful, because if there was smoke or any whatever fumes, you don't really want it forcing pressure in the engine bay and then coming up into the cabin. So maybe it's purposeful, but I think these engines would massively benefit from having an actual sealed air box and some sort of ram air that takes air from outside, preferably higher up the better, so that no water can get in, with some sort of trap, easily designed, and not sucking in that red hot air from inside the engine bay, because I think that they've been absolutely starved today, so that's been killing the performance.
But how hot was it today?
Yeah, I think it's been like 30 degrees today.
So
which
for England, that's quite hot.
For England, that's hot, but probably for one of these boats when they were new, that had been over in Spain and all sorts, weren't they? So other good things is the gearboxes both have worked perfectly, and I completely rebuilt them before this cracked head escapade. Boat repairs on Pearly Diver have been going on for a long while before you guys even got involved. Let's have a little look at the coolant level. So now we showed you at 12.5 miles to Southampton, and this is 12.5 miles back. Like really hot, like you can only just touch it. Have a look in there. Still nice and clean, nice and red, and still full. And that there's no traces of, no gasket stuck out. I'm happy. I'm very happy. Still getting a little bit of condensation in that spin-off catch can, because I think that the coolant, when I pulled the head, obviously went into the oil. I oil changed it. For those that criticised, I oil changed this engine 3 times when I rebuilt it. I don't think I made that clear enough. So there was the original oil in it, that was disregarded. Then I used a flushing oil and just flushed it through. Then I took the sump bung out, flushed it through some more, so any debris and bits of, anything that I'd used to clean the deck went through. Then used a magnet to fish all of the debris out of the tappets. When I'd done all that, fresh oil again, ran it, collected all that moisture, any that was caught in places I couldn't get to with the sump bung and with the sucker, drained it again, and then a new oil filter, and then new oil. So it got plenty of oil changes.
You've had much worse.
Yeah, I know, yeah, it wasn't, I can't really class that as a negative. I'd like to do next some proper air intakes for the turbos, because I think that'd make a good performance difference. What am I going to whinge about and have to repair now?
Don't say that.
There's always something.
Great.
Bye for now. Great success.